Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the COASTER-net Top 5. I'm Andy Robarczyk, he's Dwain Sponseller, and tonight's topic is the top 5 most intense roller coasters. So we are primed and ready to launch, and let's get into the countdown.
5. Mindbender at Galaxyland Amusement Park in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Mindbender is your classic looping Schwarzkopf coaster. It was built in 1985. It takes riders up 145 feet and drops them at 127. The track is enormous, 4,198 feet in length, has 3 inversions, all of which are loops, and has a ride time of 1 minute and 13. Speeds of over 60 miles per hour, and Andy, probably one of the most intense roller coasters at a G-force of 5.2. Now, neither of us have ridden this coaster, but we've heard a lot of stories. So what are your thoughts on this interesting coaster?
You know, I know people that have ridden Mindbender, and all of them say the same thing, that you can't ride it over and over and over. And I think that's going to be one of the things that a lot of people notice about the roller coasters on this top 5 is that most people, most normal people, can't re-ride these things multiple times in a row. Most people with Mindbender in particular have to ride a few times and then need to take a little bit of a break. And that's all because of the intense loops on this ride. And it's not so much the loops themselves, because we've seen loops on other Schwarzkopfs out there, but it's the speed at which you take these loops and then the speed at which you take the other maneuvers. That not only do you have 3 loops, but you have some great dives, you have some twists and turns and directional change, all while pulling. The coaster also tends to maintain its speed, and it also pulls, like you said, that 5.2 on the G-force scale. That this ride is one of those rides that people always talk about, that is one of the best examples of what Anton Schwarzkopf could do with roller coasters. People absolutely love Mindbender, and not a lot of people have gone out to Edmonton to actually ride it. It's inside of a mall. There's not a whole lot of other credits there at that mall. So not a lot of enthusiasts or regular, general public people have been up to Edmonton, but those that have been up there definitely rave over and over and over about how great Mindbender actually is.
Voyage at Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. Voyage is probably one of the most intense wooden roller coasters to ever have been built. At a length of over 6,440 feet, the ride takes riders up 163 feet and drops them at 154 feet, all while going speeds of 67.5 miles per hour. One of the biggest things about this ride, of course, is the amount of air time that the Voyage roller coaster has, over 24 seconds worth of air time. And the ride is extremely long as well, over 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Now, Andy, I love this roller coaster. It's my number 1. Yes, it beat out the Beast, which I know is so sad for you. But, all right, I know that you have ridden it over and over and over again. It is unbelievably, it did so well in the Thrilling 32. I think it was runner-up again to Outlaw Run. But tell us some of your thoughts on it, because I know it's one of your favorites.
Voyage, before I ever rode it, I heard people discuss of it and talk about it in terms that it's a religious experience. And that couldn't be a more accurate depiction. That this ride, once you come off of that lift hill, it never lets up on you. That first drop is an amazing first drop. into the first half that gives you some great airtime. But then the real special part of this ride is going out into the forest and doing the turnaround and the G-forces you get and the laterals you get, turning completely perpendicular to the ground. And then you hit the brake run and you actually come off of the brake run and you go through some elements and you're going faster than you did moving into the brake run. This ride does not let up. That as I've said before in the past, after you've ridden Voyage, you feel like you've done something, that it's a physical exertion to try to stay in your seat and to hold on, or even to have your hands up and not, completely be thrown about in your seat. That the Voyage is completely amazing with the maneuvers that it does. Definitely, I would have to say one of the most intense roller coasters, and definitely the most intense wooden coaster I've ever been on.
3.
Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion in Doswell, Virginia. When I-305 was initially designed, it was supposed to be the love child of Millennium Force and Maverick. What we got was an intimidating coaster that stands 305 feet, dropping riders at 300 feet, all at speeds of 90 miles per hour. This ride was so intense that they had to reprofile the first turnaround because too many people were experiencing blackouts. Even to this day on that first turnaround, many people still comment on how they gray out and some even black out going into the rest of the course. Dwain, I know you've been down to King's Dominion. You're an I-305 fan, I think. Give us your impressions of this ride.
I go back to the graying out, blacking out. I did not get a chance to ride it when it opened up. I think for Media Day before they reprofiled it, and I know a couple of our people here, I believe Daniel, Devin, and some of those experienced that, and I can't imagine seeing it then compared to what it is now, because it is still extremely intense. I mean, if you just take a look at a picture from it, maybe even just from Eiffel Tower, and you see this humongous lift hill like rise out of nothing, you can just see that this is going to be an intense first drop. I mean, it literally looks like an A-frame, just like an arch. And it's, and then you have the ground-hugging parts of it, which I'll talk about in a second. But you go down that first hill and you immediately turn to the right, you are going to gray out unless you know how to ride it. It's going to happen. They tell you to squeeze your thighs together as hard as you can when you're going down that ride to try and help out with that. I've done that, but you still do it. It's an unbelievable experience. I enjoy I-305. It's not like my favorite coaster, but it's in my top 10 because I do enjoy that particular part going down the hill. But what I really enjoy about it is the Maverick-like feel of the turns, the quick ground-hugging turns that you feel. I think it's, they say it was a marriage between Millennium Force and Maverick. I can see that. I don't see it to the extent a lot of enthusiasts see it, but there are similarities in regards to some of the maneuvers that the train does over the course of the track. Over 5,100 feet of that track, of course. Intamin has obviously made a lot of intense coasters and a lot of coasters that aren't intense, but this one definitely ranks up there and deserves to be in the COASTER-net top 5.
2.
Maverick at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. When Maverick was first announced in 2006, many enthusiasts couldn't believe what they were seeing. A coaster that was only 105 feet tall with a 100-foot drop? But let me tell you, that opinion changed when it opened in 2007, being the only Intamin Blitz coaster in America and reaching speeds at 70 miles per hour with the famous horseshoe roll and 2 launches inside of it. People loved Maverick. Now, Dwain, I know you're one of those people. Tell us a little bit about why you love Maverick so much.
My number one coaster. It was so popular to me, and still is this day, that I created our first COASTER-net podcast, named it after that, the Horseshoe Q podcast. Of course, no one's seen that or listened to that on our COASTER-net channel before. But, one of the most intriguing things to me, I really do enjoy the drop beyond vertical drop, 95 degrees. But it's the quick transitions, just the movements and how fast they go through there, how smooth the coaster is. It's one thing after another. And it's one of those coasters that just doesn't give up. It's speed from the time you leave the hill till you hit those final breaks. And, you've got that tunnel in between, which I just absolutely love, because you get a person on there who's never ridden a Maverick before, and they think the ride's over, and you freak them out by saying, all right, it's over, and then all of a sudden we take off again. I love the effects of shooting the water as you go by when it's working. But just for the sheer fact that I love launch coasters. I love Maverick. I love Top Thrill Dragster. I love Thunderbird. Anything that launches, I really, really get excited about. And I think Maverick, when it comes to intensity, I'm talking about intense ground hugging, intense turns, intense braking, intense launching. Everything you think about when it comes to Maverick, all right, is the word intense. And that is why it belongs at number 2 on the top 5.
1.
Sky Rush at Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Sky Rush lifts riders at a height of 200 feet, traveling a track of 3,600 feet at speeds of 75 miles per hour and going down a first drop at about 85 degrees. Now, I can't say a lot about this ride because I'm one of the few people who've never ridden it, even though I'm not that far away. So I'm going to throw it to Andy and let him tell you all about it because he thinks it's one of the most intense coasters in the world as well.
I'll tell you what, Sky Rush is the best analogy that I can give you with Sky Rush is the idea of you riding a bull. That at every single point, Sky Rush is actively trying to throw you off the train. That it has quick maneuvers, quick turns, that directional change makes you want to go the opposite way. And I'll tell you what, this is one of the few coasters that if you didn't have a tight lap bar on, that it would throw you off the train. What I like the most about it is that, once again, it never lets up. That even to the very last airtime hill going into the brake run is still super intense. I've seen on one of my trips on Sky Rush, I saw a guy's phone fly out of his pocket on the very last hill because it never lets up Sky Rush. Now, a lot of people have criticized that the restraints are too tight. Well, the park has tried to make modifications to that over the last few years to try to loosen the restraints once you hit the brake run. But let me tell you, you need those restraints on this ride because this is one of those rides that you will never, ever forget because, like I said before, it is actively trying to throw you off the ride. By far, I think it is the most intense roller coaster I've ever been on. I loved it. I loved every single second of it, and I can't wait to get back to Hershey Park to ride Sky Rush again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here tonight on the COASTER-net Top 5 Most Intense Roller Coasters. Hopefully you agree with our top 5 choices. If you don't, tell us down in the comments or visit our forums to discuss this episode even more. I am, of course, Andrew Barchak from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Dwayne Spunseller from the mountains of Parkersburg, West Virginia. And as always, may the Q lines be ever in your favor.
Right on, Ride Warriors.